On today's episode, we're going to be talking about chatbots and how some of the best companies out there are doing it, and also behind the chatbot makers themselves. So we're going to be talking to Mark Keelance, who's a VP of Content and Creation at Drift. We're going to be talking to Larry Kim, who is the CEO of Mobile Monkey. And I'm going to give you my own thoughts inside of what we're seeing for ourselves and also for the chatbots of our clients.
Ever wonder why some companies grow faster than others? What are they doing differently? And what are their secret ingredients? That's what this podcast is all about. Welcome to Boost Sauce.
As a quick reminder, this podcast is sponsored by Client Boost, which is our pay-per-click and conversion rate optimization agency. And it's also sponsored by Kite, which is our pay-per-click software. You can go to meetkite.com. And as always, I am your host, Jonathan Dane. Super excited to have you here. Let's get started.
Hello.
Hey, Mark. Jonathan over here from Boost Sauce. How are you?
I am doing well. How are you?
I'm pumped. I'm actually super excited to chat with you. We've been following Drift for quite a bit outside. Your VP of marketing is a really cool dude too. So I'm pumped to have you on the show. So you're basically the VP of content and community at Drift. What does that role entail?
Good question. So we have taken a slightly different approach with content and community at Drift. Instead of it being kind of siloed across the organization, we have like one holistic content strategy. And the same goes for community. So, I'm on the marketing team. I work hand in hand with Dave Gerhardt, Kate Adams, who runs our demand gen.
Okay.
And I'm focused on building content for marketing, but also for sales, the customer success team, and running community programming, including the hypergrowth events for all of Drift 2.
Dang. So like across all divisions, it seems like, not just for marketing, which I feel like is kind of the norm.
Yeah, no, across everything. Because we want to really make a really personal, end-to-end customer experience for everyone who interacts with the Drift brand and the business. And as you know, content is so important to all that.
Right. That's crazy. Okay, cool. Well, we have you on the show. We want to talk about chatbots. I mean, that's a lot of what Drift is today, and I know you guys are doing more and coming out with more stuff too. But I want to be very tactical and talk about like how marketers or, people, if they don't want to feel like they're calling themselves marketers, can use Drift to their advantage. So if I were to ask you, give me the rundown of Drift and why it's useful right now.
Sure. Drift can help in many different ways. The main way I think about what Drift can deliver for a business is an outcome. The outcomes that we help deliver are more qualified leads, really help you book more meetings to generate more pipeline and grow your revenue.
Mm-hmm.
So let's break that down a little bit, right? So the first thing we do is we help you understand how to start more conversations with people visiting your website.
Okay.
That is like the most important piece. Then we help you actually have those conversations. So we have this framework that we should probably start with called the Conversational Framework. It's 3 parts. It's engage, understand, and recommend. And we use that framework to both design how you want to start a conversation with someone using a chatbot. And then actually we use that framework to help a sales development rep, a business development rep, actually have a productive conversation that could then result in a meeting for an account executive.
So it's like it's Drift is asking questions in advance, so the actual SDR or BDR has that information before they jump on that scheduled meeting, for example?
Yeah, there's 2 ways to do it. One is bot to human, so like chatbot to human, where the chatbot is going to help do a lot of that understanding, also known as like what you were saying,
right,
qualifying the buyer, or disqualifying or routing them. Or it's just human to human where, you have people, we sometimes call them conversational development reps, but someone who's actually online, ready to engage with people that are coming to the website, either through like an inbound or an outbound type motion. So that's more the human to human, but we definitely recommend, unless you have a really specific set of target accounts you're going after, which, more and more companies do these days using an account-based marketing approach.
Yeah.
You definitely need bots across your website, and you should use these bots on your most trafficked, high intent pages to start with.
Okay.
Like that's the key. And then That's the key there. Yeah, I mean, that's the blueprint. Yeah, the blueprint we developed too will help with this too. We have a blueprint called the Conversational Marketing Blueprint, which is free. You can use it for anything. But the way we would like you folks to try using it for is how do you start conversations with people in the right way? So it's broken down into 5 different parts. You want me to go through those 5 parts?
Yes, please.
So it starts with what page do you want to start a conversation with someone on?
Okay.
So that's the first W, what page? And again, I recommend starting with high intent, highly trafficked pages, your home page, your pricing page, your demo page, your contact us page, your product page, etc. Then it's like, who do you want to have a conversation with? The bot could show up for anyone visiting that page, or you could get really, really specific and target only your customers that are sales, or your buyers, I should say, that are sales engaged.
Okay. How do you define that?
You could get really, I mean, anyone who fits into your ideal customer profile, who has shown intent both on the behavior side and maybe demographic side, definitely firmographic side. So using different types of intent signals. I think you definitely should come up with some type of way to score people coming to your website.
Yeah.
Lead scoring is one way to call it.
Yeah.
But you got to use intent signals.
Okay.
So that's the who, right? Like figure out your who, and that's going to be done through a combination, maybe you integrating Drift with your CRM, your marketing automation platform, but you can get really specific. Then it's like, does it matter where they came from? So they're on a page. So what page are they on? Who are you trying to start a conversation with? And does it matter where they came from? It could be from any place. It doesn't matter where they came from.
Right.
Or you want to show a specific bot because they came from a specific nurture campaign. So you want to engage them. You want to design a conversation that is really specific to that destination they came from and who you're trying to talk to.
Got it.
You can get really specific there.
Okay.
Right? I mean, it's really advanced if you want to get there, right? But you can keep it simple to start with. And then it's like, why? This is key, Jonathan. Why? Why does the person who's visiting that website page want to have a conversation with you? And then why do you want to have a conversation with them?
Okay.
Yeah, that's important to think about. So why would someone go to your pricing page, do you think?
Because they are intrigued to potentially work with us, but they're concerned that the pricing might be too high, and so that's why they're there.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, they definitely are probably interested in using your product in some way or your solution in some way. So why would you want to have a conversation with them, though?
Because there's that intent now that they're on the pricing page, which is beyond other pages that are, on our site too. So they have some engagement already. And if they have intent and engagement, our goal is to get them as a client if they're a good fit, but we can't know that on the website just yet. So that's why we'd want to have a conversation with them.
Yeah, you want to help them with some questions maybe.
Yeah.
See if they are, really, kind of further down the buying journey. So 100%. So the why is important. And the last W is simple. It's actually when. It's when the buyer or that website visitor decides to engage with the bot.
Okay.
So that's really, if you use those 5 Ws, you can build any type of bot you want. It could be a really simple bot for a homepage. That's like a conversation starter bot that's basically targeting anyone, right? Really low targeting. That it can really be anyone. Or you could get really specific with those 5 Ws and engage with a specific list on a specific set of pages from specific campaigns to increase the chance that they're going to start a conversation with you.
And you guys, I don't know if you still call this, but are they called playbooks, like the different types of logic the bots can take? Is that correct?
Yeah, it's playbooks. That's the primary feature we have in the Drift chat tool. And what we have actually is a playbook marketplace that comes pre-built with about 10 different playbooks that are going to help you actually design the best conversation. Because there's 2 components to being really good with Drift and conversational marketing. There's building the bot, which is what we just went through.
Right.
And then it's designing the conversation, which is that engage, understand, recommend framework I was mentioning.
Right. Okay. So there's 2 parts to it. I like that. So to your first part of like the 5 W's, I'm not gonna mention them back because I already forgot them. But what we'll basically do is you basically can have a lot of different scenarios depending on the type of page they're on, where they came from. Like you said too, if there's additional data from a lead scoring perspective, you can have that figured out. And then we're getting into like the actual, conversation. So take us through that. What do you do there?
Yeah, a lot of people fail to design a conversation that matches with the 5 W's. They either do one or the other, and they don't do both together. And if you do both together, you can have, easily 5% or 10% engagement rates with your bot.
Right.
We see on average like a 3 to 4 to 5% engagement rate in terms of our customers. That's what they see. But on Drift's website, we've seen up to 30 to 35% engagement rate.
Dang.
So, yeah, I mean, it's crazy, right? So what you want to do is you want to first ask yourself, what question is going to be the most engaging question, which again is the first part of the framework, that is going to pull someone into the conversation.
Okay.
And that's dependent on the who.
Right.
Like, who are you trying to start their conversation with?
Right.
And it's dependent on what page and maybe where they came from.
So this is I got a quick question for you, because I played. So this is back in the day when I was playing with like Olark. You know Olark, like the chat software.
Yep.
Before you guys came alive, like that's what we had to use as marketers. So I remember Olark back in the day that we had like what they call like chat greeters, and there was no logic in, like there was no playbook. There was definitely not like any conversational intelligence whatsoever. But I remember, and you might be alluding to this, so if you want to give me a chicken sound back, maybe you can. But basically, the questions that we found were the best to start like any kind of like engagement with the chat tool were like really simple questions to ask, meaning like something that was an easy numerical answer back or something like that wasn't super threatening. Because what I saw a lot was people like using, hey, welcome to our site. Thanks for, hanging out. Please ask me a question if you have one. And I related that to like a person that works in like a clothing store. Like you always say, no, thanks. I'm just looking, get out of my face, But the small, easy to answer questions were the ones that got like the quickest amount of engagement and then also lead volume. So sorry, I don't want to steal your thunder. Continue.
No, caca. That's my chicken sound.
All right, thank you.
That's good. No, definitely. So let me give you some examples. Yeah. So if you got a bot on the homepage and it's targeting a first-time visitor to the website, you know that because they're not cookied yet. One of the best questions you could ask to qualify them, this is more on the qualification side, is take the value proposition that's on your website, right? Like the thing that you help people do, the solution you help people implement, and ask that in the form of a question.
Got
right?
it.
So for Drift, it's like, hey, just curious, would you like to book more meetings for your sales team? Right? Like, hey, would you like more qualified leads every month?
Yeah.
And then the pro tip here is, yes, I would, right? That's one of the button responses.
Yeah.
Or maybe, I'm not sure. It's always a double yes question. It's never a yes, no.
I like that. Okay.
That's key. And then that's the engage piece.
Okay.
That's the engage. So understand is when the bot's going to ask maybe 1, maybe 2, maybe 3 or 4 follow-up questions to better understand that website visitor, to then lead to the best possible recommendation for them.
Got it. Okay.
So those questions are definitely going to be more about qualifying a little bit. It should be set up so that you don't ask a visitor the same question more than once, which will help you do.
Yeah.
But really, the questions the bot's going to ask, they should be done in a conversational way. So one of the things that everyone should do when they build bots is literally read out the bot flow with a friend or a coworker and have that back and forth and see if it sounds really human and really personal.
Okay. So is this like abbreviations and stuff, or what do you what do you recommend with that?
Oh yeah, it could be abbreviations. It could be like, just like how you talk, right? It could be like not even complete sentences. It could be with emojis.
Right.
You could use a GIF in the bot, right? This gets a little bit more advanced, but you want to bring in the same type of messaging experience that fits within your brand into your bot, because again, that's how so many people these days use messaging to communicate. We all do, right?
Right.
So you want to make it feel like you're having that kind of conversation with one of your friends or family members with this company's bot, again, aligned to the business's brand.
Right. For sure. That makes sense. I like that. Okay.
So yeah, I mean, that's the understand piece, and the recommend piece is really two things are going to happen. One is you're going to recommend an idea. You might recommend a piece of content. You don't always have to link them to something. In Drift bots and playbooks, you could actually have a link that unfurls, so they see the video or they see that content right in the bot flow.
Okay.
So that's like the bot's going to share something with them, or the bot's going to schedule time for them to talk to someone in the future, or it might recommend, hey, let's have you speak to someone right now, because the person's like, yeah, actually I have questions about pricing, and yes, I am free to talk. I'd like to speak to someone about pricing right now.
Right. It makes perfect sense.
And the great thing about bots, in my opinion, versus forms, is bots have optionality, right? A form is linear. Mm-hmm. It's one thing. You're like, this is the thing you're going to get, and you're probably going to have to wait to get it. And you probably have answered these same questions before, and it's just not personal. There's no options. It's boring.
Yeah.
A bot is the complete opposite of that, right? There's options. You can have personality. It's interactive. It's just so much better.
Right. Completely. And I'm like thinking of our own form, which is a 3-step form on our website where we like start with a small ask and then progressively gets more intense. But there's nothing holding us back for putting the whole thing on Drift, basically, in regards to all the different angles that we're not asking, where people also feel like they're getting a more custom tailored solution. Whereas, like you said, with the form being linear, they know at the end of this that they're probably going to have to talk to a salesperson. And they still might, but they might have a higher incentive now to want to do that because they're giving, the answers to Drift in a term that like made more sense for them.
100%. I just think a form is very limiting these days, and sometimes a form might still be useful, but it's not often that it's useful.
Right.
You really want to use a bot so that you can actually ask them being the website visitor, better questions to help them with whatever they need, right? And to tailor that experience. And a form can't do that.
Do you guys use any forms on the Drift site right now? No? All right. No. I was gonna see.
No
good. You're living and breathing what you're preaching. Good. Cool.
100%.
So like obviously a lot of things are making very, very crystal clear as far as like the framework and the fundamentals of setting things up. Do you have any like favorite greeter questions that you've seen work extremely well from like an engagement perspective, or is it all specific to the 5 W's that we talked about already?
There's definitely some. I mean, it's really specific to the page.
Yeah.
That's where it all starts.
That's the best one.
Like, the page is super important, and also really the who. The where doesn't matter as much. I mean, that's where you can get really sophisticated.
Yeah.
The page and the who. So, like, for example, I recommend you at least know the difference between, your customers, right? So if you have a marketing automation platform, we sync with all the big ones, and we sync with the big CRMs. We integrate with them. You don't want to be asking your customers, questions to understand if they're a buyer, right? That's just fast. So you want to show you either don't want to show the bot, right? That's always an option. Just don't show the bot to those people, or have it set up so that the bot is going to engage with that customer and do it in a way that's going to lead them to maybe getting some support help or asking them how they're feeling or experiencing your product or service. Yeah. So for me, the questions for the buyers all come down to what page and who. So let me give you some examples. One is the value prop. That's a slam dunk. Another one that's actually really interesting is just asking them who they are.
Okay.
Like, so this goes to the persona question. You can ask them basically, oh, hey, are you a property manager looking to increase your rental efficiency?
Yeah.
Right. For something like that, for example, like kind of the value prop and the person who they are,
like the title of them, not like you are Mark Killens. Like it's specific to like their title.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. You can also ask, hey, how can I assist you with our pricing and packaging options? We have lots to choose from, right? Like, that's again very specific to the pricing page, but like something like that where they're going to the pricing page. I guarantee there's a couple, if not more than a couple people out of 100 who are on that page that have questions,
right?
That would like assistance,
for sure.
You know what I mean?
For sure, yeah, absolutely.
So, I also think you have to overthink it. Don't overthink it.
Okay, I like that. So far we talked about like all the different types of bots and playbooks you can use depending on the location that they're on your site, where they came from, and I'm gonna get a summary for everybody else because there's a lot to understand here, which is awesome. That's step one, and then the actual side of the engagement portion. Like, do you feel like there's a lot more value in like split testing, like the initial question versus like further down in the logic of the chatbot? Like, what has the biggest impact from a result perspective?
It's really dependent on the outcome you're trying to drive.
Yeah.
And most of the time it's booking a meeting or qualifying that lead.
Yeah.
And in most cases, it's actually both. You're doing both at the same time.
Right.
So I think you got to get a baseline though. You got to get a couple bots on your website on these high intent pages, pages that get a lot of traffic, and then give it at least, you want minimum 1,000 people to see it.
Okay.
And then you can start, playing around a little bit. But I honestly think if you can give it, say a couple weeks, a couple thousand people have seen it, that means you probably have like a 3 to 5% engagement rate. And it's pretty easily done with the playbooks that we have in the marketplace.
Right.
You can then start tweaking it a bit, but I almost would say instead of tweaking those bots that are working decently well, expand it to other pages.
Got it. That makes sense. I like that. Just because you'll get more volume, as you go along. It's not just about increasing the percentage, which you can still do, but I also think you learn a lot faster by seeing what works on other pages on your site as well.
Exactly.
Got it. Cool. Well, man, this has been super, super helpful. I'm loving the starting fundamentals and also just understanding the structure behind it, like the skeleton and the anatomy of being successful with Drift. If we have any questions, we're gonna definitely follow up with you. But Mark, I want to thank you so much for your time, man. Really appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Fun. Thank you so much. Talk soon.
All right. See ya.
All right. What's up, Larry Kim? How are you?
Hey, Jonathan. Doing great. Thanks for having me today.
Yeah, of course, man. So you and I go a little bit back. We've been on stage together. We've done a webinar together. Now we're doing a podcast together. Just a lot of memories between you and I. So I appreciate you being here.
That's awesome. So many different channels. Yeah.
True. So you're one of the best people I know when it comes to the Facebook Messenger side and the chatbot abilities of what you can do there. You've obviously left your previous company and now founded Mobile Monkey. And I was really impressed with what we went through and looked at before, and we'll even link to that webinar in our show notes. But I wanted to take the listeners through, how you get started with anything in that world, even like the foundational stuff all the way through to like how they are able to scale it. So if you're talking to somebody who, let's say, has a decent brand presence, they have a community, a lot of things are going well for them, but they want to get a little bit better and a little bit more tactical, where would you guide them when it comes to, what Mobile Monkey does, but also what the Facebook Messenger side does as well?
Right. Well, firstly, I think a place to start is a lot of people are looking at chatbots as a kind of a next generation lead ads. So I'm sure everyone's familiar with lead ads. Those are the things where instead of clicking a button that goes to a web page, like when you click on an ad on Facebook, it fills out a form, like a form with your email address and your phone number and stuff like this. Now the problem with that ad format is that it just ends up in kind of a dumping ground. It goes into like an email storage tank, and and these emails, they just kind of decay.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that a chatbot can do on Facebook and there's tons of different use cases, but this is a common one for marketers, is to just, instead of using kind of this lead ad, to use a messenger ad.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And so the way that works is just when they click on the Facebook ad, instead of sending them to a web page, it sends them into a conversation with a chat, like with your business,
right.
Like through messaging, and you can respond to that manually, but that's no better than the email stuff where
right.
you're dumping these emails into a storage tank and getting back to them later. Where it gets very interesting is that you can connect all these chatbot automations to the kind of the chat landing page where you're sending
right.
people to when they click on your ad, and so typically what you do is you just design these conversational funnels to try to really understand who the user is and what they care about,
right.
By asking them a series of questions, and then really then trying to direct them to the correct offer.
Right.
In Facebook ads, you could have an audience of 100,000 people or 1 million people, and you're kind of making assumptions that I think that these 1 million people are going to really be interested in this particular offer.
Mm-hmm.
But in reality, you're just assuming that that's the case. You're kind of limited because you only have the ability to make one offer,
right.
But in messaging, you can kind of find out, what exactly it is they're interested in.
Sure. More like a menu, so to speak.
Yeah, just taking them through like a little questionnaire, and sending them to the correct answer. And because it's new and it's mobile friendly, and people really love this. People kind of view chat as a very intimate space where they
right.
converse with their family and their friends, and so if done cleverly, like kind of, I would say, go a little off-brand, be a little more kooky, be a little bit more, informal, in terms of like the images that you send them and the language. Like I never use capital letters, like abbreviations, like emojis, and I send GIFs and all this stuff. Like, so if you can go off-brand a little bit, what you'll find is that you're actually building kind of like programmatic brand affinity, like meaning like they're kind of building a relationship with this brand by chatting with them, even though it's just a robot answering the questions and asking the questions.
It's funny you say that because it reminds me of our first early days of Client Boost where we would cold email people, prospects, and I would have a GIF in there. You called it the GIF. That is going to be a whole separate episode of like where we're going to figure that out. But basically it was a guy with a cowboy hat, rodeo riding a pepperoni pizza slice, and like swinging his arm in the air as if he has like a lasso in space, basically. And that alone was obviously me not taking myself too seriously and wanting to be different. And the thing that you mentioned, which I thought was really cool, is when people do a lead ad or when people convert on a form, on a landing page, they know they're not going to get an answer to their question right then and there. But because of the functionality of a chatbot, they feel as if like the journey that they can go through and the path of logic, depending on how you set it up, even though it's automated, can get them closer and closer to have some of those questions answered immediately. And so it's a way better experience for them. It's way easier for you because you're also going to be able to have more qualified people, most likely too, that are already further down the journey with questions answered already compared to your other type of advertising format. Did I get that right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
And I think
I'm going to give myself a
one
nugget.
I think where this is really interesting is in kind of the use case of lead qualification and lead routing.
Yeah.
Okay, so like there's a whole bunch of use cases where it's like you're selling scooters. Okay, well, you kind of need to determine which is the right scooter for that individual. So you could ask like questions like, what's your weight, what's your height, your gender, and then like, boom, here's the scooter for you. So that's a difficult experience to represent on on an ad,
right.
but it makes for a more immersive, interactive chat experience.
Right.
And you can think of the same thing for like, so B2B software. So like Mobile Monkey, you sell software, like chatbot software to marketers. But it's a very different sell if we're actually selling to an agency or an advertiser. You use something like an agency, it's like a different pricing, a different packaging, a different messaging versus a marketer. It's a different persona.
Sure.
And one of the first questions that I ask in my lead ads, in my messenger ads that I use to sell my products is I just ask them like, hey, Jonathan, are you looking at an agency or an in-house marketer?
Right.
And just by, that's a very discriminating criteria. And depending on how you answer that question, it tells me a lot about how I should, redirect the conversation so that it's pertinent to the customer. So it's just opening up a lot of use cases in advertising that I think previously you would just infer interest based on kind of the audience criteria, like they have a job title or
it's a blanket approach. There's nothing really that's unique to the person. Yeah.
And swapping that out with kind of user provided conversational criteria that they're actually vouching for.
Yeah.
And these sessions can go on forever. It's like I have one customer whose chatbot is like it just sends them gifs memes of the day. Sorry, and people will just go on this chatbot and they'll request like 46 memes in a row or something.
Nice. There's a Guinness Book of World Records just about to happen in regards to that. It sounds like.
Yeah, so it's a different form of advertising. Yeah. It feels a bit like on one hand it's almost like old fashioned salesmanship. So like how you used to talk to a salesperson, a sales clerk in a mall or something like that, right. And the sales representative would try to size you up and try to figure out like how to direct the conversation and how to build rapport with the person. This wasn't really possible with the previous mediums, but now I think it opens up some new possibilities.
Totally, and I think a lot of people, one, they don't really think about that. And we work with a company, for example, called BounceX. They're out in New York, and they do what they basically call is like they create digital salespeople for websites to guide people to figure out what they want. And it's like you walk into a clothing store and they always ask you, so what are you looking for? How can I help you? And then most of the time you say, I'm just looking around. I don't really need any help. Thanks though. And you browse and you click around on websites. But when it's targeted and it's specific and you're testing the initial questions to get that interaction, it becomes very powerful. Now the trick is then the execution of it, right? Because a lot of people are like, oh yeah, I love chatbots. I use them on my website. I use them potentially, if they're strong enough and smart enough from a marketing perspective, also use that. But there's a lot of ways you can make it and get it wrong. So, what would you recommend in that world from like a recipe perspective for being able to use this without getting like too complex?
Yeah, look, I don't think chatbots are complex, right? They're new.
Yeah.
So it's a new channel. And just like how when you're starting with email marketing or Facebook ads, you just kind of have to learn the lingo and you have to kind of understand, the objectives and stuff like that.
Right.
In terms of getting started with chatbots, like you need a chatbot builder. This is not available in Facebook
right.
In Facebook Business Manager. It's like they just have an API. It hasn't been integrated into the ad manager or anything like that.
Right.
It's so like Mobile Monkey that's my chatbot builder that we provide. It's a free product.
Yeah.
And you can use that. I think we talked a little bit about one use case, which is using chatbots like to create messenger ads. There's a couple other common use cases. Another one that's pretty common is chat blasting or messenger broadcast.
Okay.
So that's where you kind of it's like a re-engagement strategy. So like all those people who click on your messenger ads, you get messaging permissions basically for those people. So they're added to your big list of messenger contacts, like your subscriber list. And so like one really common thing to do is to, set up a drip campaign so that like in the next, say, 24 hours or something, you could send them like 3, 4, 5 follow-up messages, like, say 20 minutes later or an hour later or 2 hours later to kind of pull them through the user journey a little bit. Like maybe have them, join your group or buy a course or, watch this free live webinar. Or like this is done on email already. It's drip campaigns, but just chat is
well, the engagement rate
likely.
And the open rate on the chatbot side from a message perspective is quite dramatically higher most of the time than email, right?
Yeah, so email it's like 5 to 10% open rates, pretty typical, 1% click rates. Chat is closer to 80% read rates and 20% click rates.
Wow. I'm going to give a nugget for that. Keep going, sorry.
Just saying, so, we're killing ourselves as marketers to collect these emails, and it's very difficult to then reconnect with them at scale.
Right.
Like even if you have their email, it's like a 5 or 10% chance of them seeing the next email.
Yeah.
So the messenger, you get messaging permissions from these people who engage with your bot, and you have the ability to send drip campaigns or even just do periodic chat blasts. So that would be like taking your email list and saying like, hey, we've got this big webinar next week, or something. And just sending them a broadcast message. That's another interesting use case. So I just wanted to kind of like, there's two kind of use cases with chatbots. The ad use case was where the customer was sort of initiating the conversation. They're the one who's clicking on your ad, and then they're saying like, like they initiated it by clicking on your ad, and you're kind of putting them through this funnel. The other way is that you initiate the conversation.
Yeah.
So that's more like email. That's like where you just blast out a push notification to all these subscribers. And you see what I'm saying? So like it's a little unique from a marketing perspective, because typically like the people who do the email operations are not the same people who do the lead gen operations.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
But this is one of these cross-functional channels that supports both kind of inbound and push modalities. So
for sure.
So you've got kind of these different use cases. Another one is customer support. Okay, so that's like where you are just trying to answer frequently asked questions. So using Mobile Monkey, you could, install one of those little boxes on the corner of your screen where you can type in like messages to the company, and using Mobile Monkey, like the neat thing about this is that every time someone messages your business, they become a subscriber, right? So you get all their contact information and messaging permissions, and you can respond to their questions at scale, like without requiring a human operator. So it's kind of like AdWords, where you just specify different responses and keywords for the different responses,
right? And
then the chatbot kind of analyzes what the user is asking and tries to match, kind of like broad match. It tries to match the user's query with the keywords and then responses that you pre-canned.
Right.
So if they ask like, what are your hours? You'll have some content for that gets matched, and
it can figure that out. Like if people have typos and say it in a different or ask in a different way and stuff like that. It sounds like it's smart enough to know that.
Yeah. So chatbot vendors like Mobile Monkey, they implement natural language processing algorithms. It's basically like broad match. So synonyms, plurals,
Right.
different orders of sort of the similar intent. Like we analyze what we believe is the intent of the question,
Yeah.
and then serve the most relevant response. It's kind of like a search engine or like AdWords, basically.
Got it. Okay. So if let's say that you are, let's say you're a software company, for example, or you're doing lead gen, and I'm sure there's always use case for e-commerce. We can talk about that too. Are there different types of chatbots that you would create for different things, and how would you go about setting them up? Is there like a thought you have around that? Like you need one for blasting, you need one for, lead generation, things like that. What are your thoughts?
So Mobile Monkey has maybe dozens of different templates.
Okay.
Based on different types of usages and industries and verticals. So like a use case could be like a survey. So like one thing that people do is they survey the users through messaging rather than email. It's actually really hard to get people to fill out surveys. Like I just did a survey of 5,000 emails and only got 17 responses. Okay. And
I was one of the people who did not respond. I actually don't. It might be the truth. Actually, I don't know. Sorry, keep going.
I'm gonna delete that one because you're not my target market. Just kidding. It's just the surveys is a really great use case for chat because just imagine you're on your mobile phone and
right.
You get an email and then it says like, oh, do you want to fill out this survey? Like, no freaking way. Like, you're not going to click on this link and wait for this, web page to load.
It's like when I call customer service anywhere, they're like, you've been selected for a 5-minute survey after this call. And I'm like, F that. I'm hanging up as soon as I get whatever I need done.
Right. So with messaging, like, remember, you're like 100 times more likely to see it in the first place.
Yeah.
And because email doesn't, most of it doesn't even get seen. And then they don't have to open up some new browser. Like all the questions are just buttons to press within messaging. Okay. And then they're pre-filled and everything. And just so that would be an example of a template that we have in Mobile Monkey where you just fill out the questions and that works. But there's other verticalized kind of chatbot applications where it's like maybe you're a realtor and it's going to be the same for every realtor. It's going to be like view my listings. It's going to book an appointment with me to view a listing or get notified. If a new company, if a new house gets listed in my neighborhood, it's just going to be the same kind of questions and same kind of functionality. So we just kind of prepackage that and you can kind of just include a link to your chatbot, from your business cards or from your email addresses. And that can kind of be your kind of like virtual assistant that kind of fields the level 1 questions and
I'm thinking
kind of pre-qualified users.
I'm thinking of so many things. So this is interesting because the more that you're speaking about this, the more I think of like one of the recipes that we use quite often on our landing pages. We call it the breadcrumb technique. And it basically is initially we ask questions that are anonymous for the visitors. Like we don't, want to know their name. We don't want their phone number. We don't want their email. And they answer these questions that are related to their problem that we want to help solve. And then on the second page, we basically, try to book an appointment if it's lead gen for a client or even for ourselves. So when you're saying this, what I'm like, the things popping up in my head, like the realtor example, you can start off by asking like, are you looking to buy or sell? And if either or, you can even say, well, how many bedrooms are you looking for? How many bathrooms? Is it 1 story? Is it 2 story? And you can get them to kind of commit to this detail where at the end, they're actually more likely to want to talk to somebody if you are doing lead gen versus just hitting them straight away with like that ad, for example, that we're comparing it to where it just says, leave your name, email, and phone number. There's not a lot of value or excitement, or you're not getting their foot in your door as well, it seems like.
That's why those chat pop-up windows work so well.
Yeah.
People view it as sort of a lower friction, like compared to filling out a form. Filling out a form, it's like, oh my God, and then we add it to the list.
I'm going to have to give a blood sample and I'm going to be screwed basically because 10 salespeople are going to call me. That's what's going to happen.
Right. So yeah. But the funny thing about the chatbots is that we already have their information.
Right. So they don't know that.
Like as soon as they say hello,
right.
Okay. As soon as they say hello or anything, the business is then able to collect the user's information, like first name, last name, location, time zone, gender, profile photo,
blood type. Just kidding.
That information is provided automatically,
right.
In order to customize the conversation, so that I can say, "Hey, Jonathan, did you think about this bungalow or something?" I can customize the conversation, to reflect that kind of their identity.
Yeah. No, it makes a ton of sense. And so, I mean, same thing for e-commerce. If you're selling products, it can guide the person to the correct product. It is like that digital salesperson. As people, define their audiences, define either using a template or building, I guess, their own logic. Are there some specific, don't do these things, like it's common and this is a mistake that happens frequently? Are there any of those?
The thing you need to be worried about is your block rate.
Okay.
So, block rates are kind of the equivalent of like an email unsubscription rate.
Ooh.
I don't know if you know this, but if you use like MailChimp or something, and if you have more than a 1% complaint rate, like people saying, "I never signed up for this thing in the first place," you'll actually be banned from the platform. Okay?
Wow.
Like you'll have to take your email list and go to some other provider. Okay?
Go to a shadier provider. Just kidding.
With lower standards. It's sad but true. But the challenge here with messaging is, if you have like a 6, 7, 8% block rate, so it's like people actively saying like, "Cut it out, stop messaging me ever."
Right.
Okay. Then you can actually lose messaging permissions.
Okay.
So like the ability to do all these automated responses and push notifications gets deactivated from your page, and so you got to be monitoring your block rate.
Mm-hmm.
So you were just asking, like, are there any things mistakes that people make? The mistake they make is they're not monitoring the unsubscribes. No, not the unsubscribes. Unsubscribes are fine.
Yeah.
Okay? That doesn't count because they're not blocking you.
Right.
It's the block rate. The strategy is not to try to keep these people on your list forever and have no way to get out. It's actually the opposite. You want to curate kind of a list of super fans.
Okay.
Something like where the people who are on your list really, really want to be there.
Right.
Because the content is so great, or because it's so useful. And so this implies like when I send out a message blast, I put the unsubscription messages at the beginning of the message, not at the end of the message.
Really? That's crazy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, there can be no ambiguity as to how to unsubscribe.
Right. Because unsubscribe doesn't matter, because you're talking like the block rate, right? And so you'd rather have them feel like they're able to do that first and then not have it turn into an actual block. Is that correct?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So like my block rates are less than 1%.
Yeah.
And it's because we do a couple of things. We do scheduling. So like, we're not going to send out a blast at like 2 a.m. or something. We have your time. We have your time zone because Facebook gives you the time zone of the contacts, and we schedule them to be a specific time relative to their time zone, like 8 a.m. or 10 a.m. or whatever. And then making it very easy to unsubscribe. So like some of the big mistakes that these e-commerce companies were doing were they were just like, e-commerce is among the most spammy, like in terms of email marketers. If you look it through your email inbox, like that's like a vertical that's pretty awful with sending out like weekly deals or daily deals or daily reminders. Like it's all buy now kind of stuff, and like I think messaging is a different medium. Like you can't. It's not just like it's not just copy and paste the same notifications that we're sending on email.
Right.
we really need to keep the block rates low and the engagement rates high, or otherwise we'll get booted off this platform. And it's not like you can pack your bags, and go to like, I don't know.
There's no other platform. Like you're screwed.
Yeah, exactly. So that's a big mistake.
Okay.
You gotta really think about the value that we're providing, and it's not for you to decide that this is valuable. It's based on your block rate.
Mm-hmm.
So
makes sense. Makes sense.
It's kind of like a crowdsourced the determination of your value.
Like who could ask for a better feedback loop? Like you better you better listen to what they have to say and see it, and then make an adjustment, because these are the your prospects in a sense. So it seems like a no-brainer.
I think it's so great, because like the marketers get a little nervous when I describe this, but actually it's really wonderful, because it means that what happened to email, like how it's like 5% open rates and all this stuff. It's I'm not going to say never going to happen to chat, but it's going to take it's going to be a much longer kind of cycle, because the bad actors kind of automatically get
booted pretty quickly,
eliminated.
Yeah. I mean, like the saying goes, marketers ruin everything, and so it could be a matter of time, but we'll see. So far, it seems like a great opportunity to take advantage of. Is there anything as we wrap up the conversation, Larry, that it's for me, everything that I'm hearing, and I'm not just saying this because of basically I'm doing product placement for you because I know the value of Mobile Monkey. Is there anything that we want to tell the listeners in regards to what they should be aware of? Because we talked about the audience, we talked about the templates, we talked about things that you can do yourself in regards to getting direct response value and outperforming a lot of other ad types. Anything we're missing?
Yeah, it's just the future of messaging, I think.
Yeah.
And so it's really an exciting emerging field here. If you go to China today, or these other Eastern nations, there's no news feed, okay? People use WeChat to order a chat application to order their taxis or order their lunch, or
I heard people do
stuff,
pay their mortgages through that too. I haven't seen it, but I've heard about it.
Yeah, so the newsfeed is a very strange construct. It's a very roundabout way of this. Your messaging contact list makes more sense. Okay, I want to message a business, I'm going to just kind of scroll through this random, thing of newsfeed, and maybe I'll, see a business ad that I'm going to respond to. You see something it's a very unusual construct, the newsfeed, and Facebook knows that it's not the future of Facebook.
Yeah.
I was just at F8, and it's every single session was about messaging, and
really,
the future of Facebook is kind of these smaller,
so people
private conversations.
People on our team were at the Google Marketing Live event, and one of the things that stood out that I was really curious about was they're having conversational display ads that they're going to start rolling out, which is kind of very similar to what we're talking about too. Facebook is not the only company knowing that there's a lot of advantage to this, so that's really encouraging to hear.
Yeah, so and there was a leak in the New York Times saying that Facebook is planning on integrating WhatsApp and Instagram and Messenger. And so the number one kind of objection to doing marketing on Messenger is that not everyone uses Messenger. It's only a couple billion people. But who doesn't have a WhatsApp or an Instagram or a Messenger? And if they don't have any of those, is this really a valuable lead that we're talking to?
Sure.
So it just it's one of these really neat kind of inflection points in the technology adoption curve.
Yeah.
And I expect to see it's very unused right now. It's probably 1% of businesses use messaging, but I think we would not be crazy to see 30-40% of them using this stuff in the next 3 to 5 years.
That's why we're talking. Exactly.
Everything I know about marketing is that you have to jump on channels quickly. It's of my million Twitter followers, 80% of them were in the first 2 years when there was nobody on the platform.
Yeah.
So it's just it'll never be this easy to use these systems and really get a head start in terms of list creation and
yeah.
et cetera.
So you're basically saying I should not prioritize my radio advertising plans over the Facebook Messenger plans that I also have.
Yeah, it just requires a little bit of foresight to see where the industry is going.
For sure. Yeah. Very kind way of you to explain that in a nice way to shut me down. I appreciate that. Well, Larry, this has been super, super fun. I know a ton of people are going to get value because not only is the conversation between you and I going to be in video format, audio format, and also written, we're also going to share the webinar that we did, which gives a whole nother dimension to this of what you can do beyond this. So I want to thank you for your time and, let you enjoy the rest of your day.
Awesome. Thanks, Jonathan, and thanks everyone for joining.
Of course. Awesome, man. Thank you. So this was a very interesting episode because I have done a lot of reading, a lot of research when it comes to chatbots in general. Obviously, you guys had the pleasure of listening to our guests about this too. One thing I wanted to help everybody out with that we've seen internally from our own experimentation, but in addition to that, our clients that we're working with too, is that just like any form, any flow on a website, chatbots get hyped because of like their engagement rate. And the thing that I think frequently about is the same thing that like SMS and text is being touted in the marketing world for having a high open rate. It was the same thing with email when email was newer too. Not that SMS or text is newer, but eventually us marketers and our advertisers are going to ruin that channel as well too. So when we've had the opportunity to talk to so many guests on this show so far with so many different interpretations and opinions, one thing you got to keep in mind is that there's another human on the other end of that screen, whether they're interacting with your chatbot on desktop, mobile, tablet, it actually doesn't really matter. One thing you have to make very, very certain of to make sure it's successful, not just for the chatbot to do an activity, but for you ultimately to make more money, which I think is a lot of the people's goals in the back of their mind when it comes to marketing or advertising in general. It's not to get open rates. It's not to get reply rates. It's not to get booking rates or demo rates or MQLs to SQLs. Those are all indicators. Those are all leading indicators for what's more important, which is actually the sale. So when you do things and you're testing things and you're listening to a podcast like this or reading articles about other things, one thing you need to keep in mind is, first off, you may never have enough data to actually know what you're testing. Meaning, does doing this chatbot open message versus another one actually have a better close rate that turns into making more money? You need to have a lot of volume before you can figure that out. And when people actually do the demo call, let's say you're using Drift, for example, and you were trying to schedule demos, it is as much the intent of the person who is on the demo, who is your prospect, and the deliverability and the attitude and the tone and the energy and the problem solving of the product on that demo that has an impact. So you're never really fully running a perfect experiment. So the best advice that I can leave you off with is make sure that your chatbot gives value, meaning it gives people and points them in the right direction. It doesn't do any bait and switch. If you do have to ask a person to grab a time on a calendar to book a meeting, make sure you explain why you can't give the answers that they're looking for right then and there. Let's say, for example, that you are a lawyer and you're in fact a personal injury lawyer. We used this example before too. Your demo bot or like the free consultation chatbot that you're using can give a person more intel in regards to the questions that the lawyer would ask the prospect if they're on the phone call with him. Like, well, when did the accident happen? What kind of accident happened? Are you in pain right now? Did you go see a doctor yet? Are you taking any medicine for it yet? Those kind of things help the prospect know that they're getting closer and closer to a solution versus just saying, choose your path through the chatbot and then eventually book a time. Or another example could be like grab an ebook. They might want that grab that ebook or they might not. So like, again, think of this as a human being, like you're a receptionist in your own office and people are coming in, which is the equivalent of your website or your landing page, and they're engaging with you, the chatbot. here in this situation, you're the receptionist, and you're asking them questions to point them in the right direction. You're not just giving them one-stop shop and then be happy with it. Because a lot of times the hope is to automate and simplify, but we as humans that only really works if we can get answers to our own questions quicker. So keep that in the back of your mind as you test that out.